Okay, welcome to another episode of Out from the Cube. And because we are getting kind of backlogged with guests and with Jason Wells and my own podcast, we're not shouting out the episode number on anymore because now it's just kind of as they roll through. But again, I keep kind of beating this drum a little bit as the podcast is growing and as I'm more active on LinkedIn and some other social media channels. It has impacted me so much. We started the podcast in April. And since April to now, January, however many months that is, 8 or so months, I've just met some incredible people that I never would have met had it not been for the podcast or for LinkedIn, for that matter. And today's guest is no exception. We do not know each other. We met a few minutes ago and we talked offline. And this is what I actually really love about this platform that we have and the podcast and what it's doing for me personally, selfishly, and what it is doing for hopefully our guests, but definitely the people also that are listening, because we have Julian Watkins with us, and I'm excited about hearing his story. I have read his story. I have listened to some YouTube videos of him. I have an idea of the direction he's kind of heading in life, but I'm excited to hear it from him. So, Julian, really, thank you for the time. I know you're busy and we had to kind of crunch some things around or move some things around to get you on, but I really appreciate, you taking that jump with me to just being on a podcast, not knowing anything about me, my audience, or what we do. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we reached out and I kind of just throw a wide net actually on LinkedIn. I connect with as many people. Lewis Howes is somebody in the St. Louis area. And now he's a kind of a national name and brand who runs a very large podcast and has written some books. One is, I believe maybe just one, but one is called The School of Greatness. And I read something from Lewis that said, hey, if you're on LinkedIn, and that is actually how Lewis got going, was on LinkedIn. He just said, connect with everybody and just be real authentic and just try to have conversations with everybody. And I've taken that and tried to take it to an extreme. So that is, I think, how we met, was just me kind of throwing a wide net and putting my passions out there and my interests, and then maybe connecting and saying, hey, I run a podcast and would you have an interest? This is what the podcast is about. And would you have an interest in that? And you responded. So again, I appreciate that. But your bio on LinkedIn is a really interesting bio. And I did ask you offline if it's okay to kind of go into it. And I'm really interested in your journey and to where you're at now and what you're doing now. And let me start there, actually. What do you currently do? I want to say you're with the Red Cross, but I could be totally wrong with that. I know you're involved with them or have been at some point.
Yeah, I'm an executive director with the Red Cross now.
Okay,
yes.
And is that kind of a regional thing, or because you're down where are you located?
I'm in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and it is a regional thing. The Red Cross, or the director of the Red Cross in Southeast Missouri, so I cover about 21 counties here in Southeast Missouri.
Okay, and what is your day to day? Like, what do you do for them? What does a senior executive do for the Red Cross in the region?
Well, I have a close relationship with our board of directors, and a lot of fundraising and business relations with elected officials, and just making sure that we have the connections with people that are hosting our blood drives and our disaster partners as well.
Now, I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. As questions kind of come up, ideas come in my head, or things I do not know that I want to know or should know. Is it true? Like, I've read these things about disaster relief and all this, where if you are going to give money to an organization in disaster relief, that, if you give $1, some of these disaster relief funds or collections, maybe 20 cents goes to the actual disaster. But the Red Cross is like really high on that list, isn't it, on disaster relief and what it does? And you may not, I'm not trying to put you on the spot and give you and have you give us analytics, but I remember hearing that Red Cross, like if you give money to an organization for disaster relief, that is the route to go.
Yeah, and we're very good with managing our money, and most of the money that is spent, most of the money that's donated in disasters is spent for the program services. We're about 91% volunteer-based, like 91 to 94% volunteer-based across the country. So there's only 6 to 9% of us that are actually paid staff. So it really is the true work of the American people that are pushing this initiative forward and helping us with our vision.
Now, are you involved in some of that? Do you have kind of a wide net with what you do, or are you kind of isolated, like, because we do hear about the blood drives and the disaster relief. Is there something that you specialize in with the Red Cross?
Not really. We're all one Red Cross. So, I'm working with disaster relief. If we have a disaster happen in our area or in another area, I could deploy out to that disaster. And also with our blood collections, I'm helping to build that as well. So it's come together now, and we're all one Red Cross. Sometimes people see us as the blood people and the disaster people, but as of now, it's a cohesive.
How long have you been with them?
I've actually been with them since December of 2017, so about 14 months now.
14 months, perfect.
Yes.
Well, let's go back then to your story, because I'm interested in however long it takes, and as long as we have time and you're free to kind of share your story. I'm interested on how you've ended up where you're at, because I think there's people have this plan for their lives, and I think you're going to get into your story a little bit, and the only thing that I can really take from your story in reading it over is you must be really smart. I don't know how else to phrase that or to frame it. I just know that your background educationally and what your degrees and things of that nature. I'm like, man, you've really knocked some things out. But when I kind of look at that and see people that have that background and that pedigree and that knowledge and education, that we kind of see this great vertical line to success, and how you've got to the Red Cross and wherever else you've been. But reading your bio, it is not that straight line. It was not that straight line up, right?
Not at all. It's been a curvy path up and down to success.
Perfect. Well, start it out. Like, where did you grow up? Where did you go to? I hate to use the St. Louis phrase of where you went to high school, but where did you grow up, and where'd you go to college? What'd you get your degree in, and how did you start?
I grew up in Cairo, Illinois. It's spelled like Cairo, Egypt, but we mispronounce everything in Southern Illinois. So I grew up in Cairo, Illinois. It's a pretty low income area, and a lot of actually the Chicago Tribune came to my college graduation because I was the only graduate from my high school of that year that went to a 4-year university and graduated.
How big was your graduating class?
Oh man, somewhere between 40 and 60, something like that. So right. Yeah, not a very big graduating class. We had a lot of people that went military and some other people that went to college with basketball scholarships and things of that nature, but didn't complete in the 4 years. I know there have been some people since then that have completed their degrees, but it was not a rare thing, but it was very interesting that I was able to go to law school and be able to kind of take that path. So I guess in getting there, I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I got my business degree from there in business administration. And from there, went on to law school, also at the University of Illinois, and completed my law degree there as well.
And what was the specialty of law that you practiced or got your degree?
Honestly, did not have a specialty. I kind of tried every different type of law, to be honest. I started off in corporate law, doing railroad litigation. There was a major railroad company that outsourced my firm, and that was kind of my specialty at the time, was railroad litigation, corporate governance, that kind of thing. And it just turned out to not be for me. Was, having a lot of, I guess, mental struggle with being a corporate attorney and just not really feeling like I was fulfilling my my vision and my mission. So it ended up, I actually hated corporate law so much that I quit to be a janitor at my old high school.
Right. That's right. I remember you said that. Let's start there then.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 years getting your undergrad at Illinois. What years were those? Not to try to age or anything like that. This is how so I'm into teams and coaching and lead and all the stuff that we kind of talked about offline and that some of our guests know about. But my mind always thinks, okay, University of Illinois, what years was he there? Because I equate everything to basketball. So I want to know how good Illinois was at basketball when you were there. What years were you there?
The first year I was there was the year we got second place in the tournament to North Carolina. So I was there from 2004 to 2008. So I had one good year of sports.
One good year. Okay, so that was a good year. So the Final Four was actually here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And they lost to Carolina in the championship game. I think they were 35-2 or something. They had Deron Williams and all those. Anyway, okay. So 4 or 5 years there.
Tar Heels. So
what's that?
They lost to Sean May and the Tar Heels there.
Right.
Yeah.
So four or so years, and then you immediately then started your law degree and
Yes.
working towards that. And how many years did that take you?
3 years.
So 3 years. So you spent 7 or 8 years or so in Champaign.
7 years in Champaign, yes.
7 years in Champaign. And then how long did you practice law before you decided that was enough?
I practiced for about 6 years. So I started off, I did a year in corporate law. Then I had the short stint as a janitor. And I also did a temporary firefighter at a paper mill.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was combined with that janitor position just to kind of make ends meet.
Right.
And from there, I opened my own law firm and did criminal defense and divorce work for about a year with my own firm.
Okay, so I want to make sure I get the story, because this is fascinating me, because there's something here to unpack a little bit. When you were doing corporate law, you said were you doing corporate law and then when did you quit being a lawyer and become a janitor at your high school?
That was in August of 2012, I believe.
Okay, and like that, you literally just stopped. You were like, "Hey, I'm done, and I'm just going to go, and I need a plan, and I'm going to go." Most people aren't going to do that. Like, most people are not going to do that. I'm not asking for any numbers or anything like that, but I'm willing to bet as a lawyer you're making a good living, and that it costs you a fair amount to go to law school, and maybe it's paid for, maybe there's loans, however it's worked out. But right, there's an investment that you made over 7 years, and then you're all of a sudden sitting down with a mop and a bucket. Right.
Yeah.
and cleaning toilets, and you're sitting there. Let me ask you this. How old were you when you became a janitor?
When I became a janitor, that would have been 20, honestly, I don't know, 25 or so.
How was that mentally for you?
Mentally, it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. Whenever I was doing corporate law, I mean, I did have some struggles. I went through a divorce at the time and was having some issues with drugs and alcohol, to be completely honest. And I just realized that I needed to kind of take a break and find myself and realize what made me happy. And I realized how far I'd gotten disconnected from my roots and from my family. So it was good to just get back, moved in with the parents, which was a struggle. Nobody wants to move back in with their parents in their mid-20s, but did that. And being able to work at the high school, I was able to connect with the students there and just really start to feel like I was giving back to my community. And eventually took a position as a basketball coach there as well while I was practicing law.
Perfect, so, right? Well, let me ask you this. So if you're practicing law, and where are you practicing law? Like, when you're a corporate attorney, and are you in Champaign? Are you up in Chicago? Are you back home? Like, what part of Illinois were you in?
I was in Peoria, Illinois.
Peoria.
Yes.
Now, is there something about being a lawyer that, a marriage struggles, you turn to drugs and alcohol, you kind of forget who you are? I would see, like, New York City being a great corporate lawyer getting lost in getting into the mix and the grind of that, I could see. But was that kind of what you were dealing with a little bit in Peoria?
I think it was just that I was having kind of an identity struggle. Corporate law just wasn't for me. The attorneys that I was working with, I just didn't really feel like I fit into that culture. I had more fun and probably more enjoyment having lunch with the secretaries than I did with other attorneys in that area. So I know some of them might check this out, but I just didn't really feel like I fit into that culture. So it was really just wanting to get home and figure out, who I was again.
Did something happen? Was there a rock bottom moment? Was there something like you hit it and you're like, "Hey man, I got to make some changes, and I'm involved in drugs and alcohol. I've lost my wife, and I don't like my career. I don't like these choices I'm making." Was there something that just kind of hit you, like you were like, "I've got to make a change"?
Yeah, there was a moment in I think the summer of 2012 when I actually ended up in the hospital because I wasn't maintaining my health very well, and again just had the struggles with the drugs and the alcohol, and it just honestly didn't know if I was going to make it. I honestly felt like I was just slowly killing myself. And it was just that aha moment where I just needed to get back. I started dating my best friend from high school during that time period after going through the divorce, and just really wanted to get back to where she was because I knew I felt grounded and just connected more so with myself back home.
That's perfect. I mean, I really admire that. Was she the one that helped you through that then? Because I'm wondering this. My mind is thinking like, hey, what's the the bottom moment? And now I'm thinking about like who helped you, who gave you the hand, who was there to help you and hug you and love you and say, you know what, whatever you're rolling through, I'm here with you. Because the people that I have talked with that have come out of those kind of cycles, it's that rock bottom moment and it's somebody, that was there, right?
Absolutely. It was her. She definitely helped me through a lot of that. She was, my rock at that time. And I have an amazing family, amazing support system. I had a couple really good friends who were willing to drop everything and just come at the drop of a hat whenever I needed them. So I'm surrounded by some amazing people. I always say I'm not the smartest person, but I'm smart enough to surround myself with very smart people.
That's good. Yeah. So now we're a janitor, okay, at 25 with this law degree, and and I appreciate that you're giving back to the community and all that, but this is not your life ambition, right? To be a janitor at the high school. So then you start thinking about what's next. So where do we go from there, being a janitor?
Basically, that's when I started looking around for law positions because I realized that, I need to start paying back those student loans that we were talking about. And it's hard to find anything in this area. It's a very low income area, not too many attorneys. I was actually one of maybe a handful of attorneys in my county even. So I started my own law firm and started doing criminal defense, divorce work, took some public defender appointments on the side, basically just to make ends meet and to pay some bills and, have a little fun money. Mm-hmm. But it was, again, it was still a struggle, still dealing with the alcohol, not the drugs anymore. Mm-hmm. But it was probably a little too much freedom for me at the time. But it just really, like I said, felt good to be able to coach basketball, give back to the students and the young people in my area. And it was just an amazing experience. But then after about a year of that, I realized that I really liked having health insurance and like being able to go to the doctor. So I was offered a job as a prosecutor in the county a little north of where I coach basketball. So I jumped at that opportunity and took a job as a prosecutor there.
How long did you do that?
I did that for about 2.5, 3 years. And that was just, again, an amazing experience. Really felt like I was able to connect with the community. If we had a situation, because where I was coaching basketball, we had some rivals where fights happened at almost every game. And I was able to, go down to the housing projects in the towns where I grew up and just talk to the people that were going to be causing trouble. If somebody had a fight, I could call them into the office and have a discussion with them and find out how to not let that happen again, as opposed to just ruining people's records with prosecution. I truly felt like my purpose was to give back and to help those people through those situations instead of just punish them for it. And that was just an amazing experience.
So let me kind of pivot off this, and now that to get into really what you're kind of into now, but you've hit on this a few times, although you've only said it once, but I think you've said it a few times, is how driven are you by your purpose and by identifying your purpose and understanding your purpose, right? Because I think you've said that a few times without saying it, although you did just say it. You were trying to figure out your purpose.
Yeah. I think that's where kind of my career path has led me, because every position I'm in, I find a purpose and I really kind of push forward towards that. And then I hit some sort of brick wall where I feel like I'm not making the impact that I want to. And it just kind of makes me take a left turn and try something new. And the same with prosecution. I started feeling some pressure, I guess, politically to change the way that I prosecuted. And it just wasn't for me anymore. And so I went back to doing defense work, and then eventually, like I said, just didn't feel fulfilled and wanted to give back more and started looking for jobs in the nonprofit sector.
Is there, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't have that level of intelligence or anything like that. And I'm not sure how it all works, but I keep picturing, the Jerry Maguire movie where Jerry Maguire sits there and writes this manifesto on how he's going to change. You know, he doesn't like the way that the sport agent business is going, and he writes this manifesto about how he's going to change it and how he's going to do things a certain way. Is that possible in the law business, in being a lawyer, and with that culture and environment and how law works, that you can sit there? Because it sounds like everywhere you went, you weren't fulfilled. You didn't feel like your purpose. You didn't feel like you were serving, or whatever it might be, right? And yeah. I'm sitting around going, well, I wonder why you chose to leave instead of maybe sitting there saying, hey, we're going to do things different. Maybe you can't. And that's, I guess, my question. Can you?
And I thought I could at one point. Like I said, the political pressure was a little too much. And to get votes, I mean, you kind of have to appease everybody. And I'm not the kind of person to kind of stray from what I truly believe in. And actually what really, I think, caused the exit was my last year as a prosecutor. I had a basketball player who was the starting point guard, would have been the starting point guard on my varsity team, and he was shot and killed in the county where I was a prosecutor. And it actually, the same day he was shot and killed, I was appointed as head prosecutor. So I was the only prosecutor left and ended up having to work his case. And it was just heartbreaking to realize that he was an amazing student, straight A student, and didn't think that he would be the one that would be involved in that kind of situation. So it just really made me see that even though I was coaching him and coaching this team of guys, acting hopefully as a father figure for them, that even though I had that position, I wasn't able to prevent the things that were happening. So that's kind of what fueled my exit from prosecution and from the law, and also kind of propelled my public speaking career, because I truly feel the need to give back. And I think the only true way to change the criminal justice system is to prevent those kids from ever getting into the system to begin with. So if any of my words can help to prevent that, because I was a product of the criminal justice system. I was in and out of jail throughout college, and I had all the tools given to me in the world. I did not have any reason to have been caught up in the things that I was caught up in. And so if that happened to me, I just know that, giving back to those students who weren't as fortunate is truly important.
Look, I'm going to ask a somewhat maybe personal question. If you can't answer this, then tell me to move on.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I've never been that, I've never done drugs. I do like to drink. I probably drank too much in college, all that sort of stuff. And so I never got wrapped up in that. Never been to jail, never been in jail, never spent the night in jail, any of that sort of stuff, right? So but I spend a lot of my time in my life, not a lot, I shouldn't say that. I spend time in my life reflecting back on my life and mistakes that I have made or opportunities I've let slip through. And I spend more time than I should in regret and thinking back on things that I messed up on, or didn't treat somebody the right way, or was too selfish, or didn't grasp opportunities. And I beat myself up about that stuff. And it's small things, right? And I guess the question is, drugs, alcohol, jail, things of that nature. How do you spend, like, when you think back on those moments? Because you sound, I've read your bio, I've listened to you speak, all that sort of stuff. You are, an accomplished, polished guy, right? That is successful. When you look back at the things, how much time do you spend in regret? How do you deal with regret? Do you ever get depressed because of that stuff? How do you pull yourself out of that stuff? How do you handle that? Because, I deal with small things, right? And if I had sat back and said, man, I spent, I was addicted to this or did too much of that and spent time in jail, I would have a hard time with that personally.
Yeah. And I used to spend a lot more time in regret, because, I was looking for opportunities in law, and every time I would apply for a job, I'd have to bring this up. And I did used to spend a lot of time in regret, but I actually watched a video somewhat recently. And whenever I start doing my public speaking, it just kind of makes me feel like there was a purpose for that. And there was a quote in this video that said, your imperfections make you influential. And that really resonated with me, because I see that somebody who was in my same position that may be living in regret and may be depressed because of that, because I have been extremely depressed. That's one of the reasons that I turned to drugs, and, I deal with some mental health issues. But if I can give back and tell somebody, I'm able to push through that and still able to succeed in life. And it wasn't so much a roadblock as it was a stepping stool, that it's really gives me some purpose to that. So I try not to live in regret. I still fall back into it sometimes. I mean, I think we all do.
Sure.
But yeah, I really feel that now that I'm able to do public speaking and truly give back and share that message, it's made me regret a lot less.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot with that, but I just, how people get out of that. The reality is, I listen to a lot of Gary Vee, as people that listen to the podcast know. I typically bring him up every episode, but he said, we need to have this mindset that everybody sucks, right? Yeah. We spend so much time in self-doubt and beating ourselves up, and I can't do that because I did this, and I'm not good enough or smart enough, have the resources, the money, the connections, the friend, whatever it is, right? That we can't move forward. So we always just kind of stay still, right? But it's those people that his mindset was everybody sucks. Everybody's got baggage, right? Mm-hmm. And the phrase that stuck with me, and I really liked how you phrase that. And people listening, and I do know people take notes and listen to this stuff. You need to write down what Julian said. But the thing that when you said it, I won't get it right. But what you said made me think about what I told myself. There's a message in the mess. Mm-hmm. Right, all the messes that we go through and all the mistakes we go through, there's a message there. You're going through it to either help your children or help the people you're coaching or to storytell.
Yeah.
Right. And I really appreciate that. And again, sorry to put you on the spot with that, but I listened to your. Let me ask this: How did you kick off your speaking? Your speaking that you do, and I guess maybe to start with that, how did you get connected with the TED Talks? And for those that are listening, go to YouTube, type in Julian Watkins. He has a really good, it's about 12 to 15 minute talk. And I want to get into that a little bit. And I am aware of our time. We have about 35 minutes. And there are 4 bullet points or 4 pillars that you talk about that I really like. And I was taking notes today on your talk. But how did you get involved in the public speaking? And why did you think that was the route to go?
I guess I got involved in the public speaking, just like I said, because I felt like I had a message to share. And people, in sharing my story, I actually connected with Mitch Matthews. He does a podcast called Dream, Think, Do. And he does these things called the Big Dream Gathering. Yeah. And I went to a Big Dream Gathering, and it's basically, he gives this message of hope to begin with. And then you kind of take a piece of paper and you put your dreams up on the wall. And then everybody kind of goes around and checks everybody's dreams and see if there's anything they can help you with. And just watching Mitch speak and just the amount of inspiration that he gave me made me feel like I could do that and I could give back. And I went up and spoke with Mitch afterwards and just kind of shared a little bit of my story. And he just told me, he's like, man, you got to get on the stage and you got to start speaking. And so I did. I just started trying to book speeches, doing free talks wherever I could. And one of my big dreams that I wrote was to do a TED Talk. And so I got on the website and just started looking up TED Talks that were accepting applications. And I found one about 5 hours north of me that was accepting applications and submitted a 90-second video. And they had about 600 applications from 4 different continents. And they selected 20 of us for the final round and 12 from that. Wow. So
that's
it was just
great. I mean, I think I love stories like that. That's big time.
It was.
That's awesome, man.
It's one of those things. And whenever I try for something like that, I just kind of speak it into existence as one of my things that I try to do and just kind of really visualize it actually happening. Mm-hmm. And so I was telling people, hey, I'm going to do this TED Talk. I applied. I'm going to do a TED Talk. Like, trust me, I'm going to do a TED Talk. And it just kind of slowly started coming and becoming a lot more real, and connected with the person that was putting on the TED Talk there, and just really had a good time. Man, there's a lot there. We've got 35 minutes. I told you when we started we could go for a couple hours. I really admire. I think listen, I cuss a fair amount on this show, but I think that's badass, man. Good for you. Thank you. I kind of tossed myself into things, and that's something that terrified me, to be honest, doing the TED Talk. but just kind of off the professional path. In the same way, whenever I was quitting corporate law, I kind of created this bucket list of things that I always wanted to do. And one of the top things on it was to do a rap battle, which is, yeah, super, like, just awesome.
like Eminem style, like 8 Mile.
Like
right?
8 Mile, yeah. Because I've been a fan of them since about 8th grade. So I booked a flight to Minneapolis and booked myself at this rap battle performance.
You're kidding me.
No. And I figured I was like, okay, you've paid $400 for a flight. You're going here. You got to do it. So, yeah, I did that. And actually have been performing all across the country over the past, few years. And actually was on MTV doing a rap battle.
You're kidding me.
Years ago. So it's one of those things. I'm just somebody that throws myself into a situation and I'll figure it out later.
Right. So let me, man, good for you, man.
Go several different directions.
We can, but listen, this is what I really want to focus on, because I want to make sure that the people that are listening, my deal is that I like getting the content and I like being inspired, and you're without question doing that for me. But the name of this podcast is Out from the Cube. And what that meant to me and how I came up with it is these people, me. So I'm not just throwing it out there that everybody, the people listening, but me. You wake up, you go to your job, you clock in, you clock out, you sit in a cubicle all day, and you're trying to figure out that there's more to life, and you want more responsibility, a different job, a better title, a better pay grade, whatever it might be, right? But we're always so fearful of getting out of our comfort zone or pushing the envelope or doing all these things. And we've spent a fair amount of time, maybe over the last 10 or so episodes, because in the groups that I work with, this seems to be the theme, right? Of having fear because you can't do something well, and practicing it and repping it out and doing things correctly and going slow until you get it down perfect, and slowly speeding it up. And the more reps you get, the more confidence you get. The more confidence you get, the less the fear is there. And Jason, the guy that I have on Wednesdays and Thursdays, you replace the fear with excitement and all that. And so at some point, and so your story's great, and it's great that you've had success, and it's great. But what's great about your story is this: that there's things that you might regret, that it didn't keep you down, that you overcame it, or you thought that there was more to do, and that there's things you wanted to accomplish or do, of a TED Talk or a rap battle, right? A rap battle for somebody from the Southern Illinois, right? And that now travels, the country doing that. Like, who does that? Who does those things? And like, so when you sit there and have that mindset, like, hey, I'm going to give a TED Talk, and there's every reason in the world for you to say you're not going to do it, that you're not going to get accepted, that you're not good enough, your story isn't good enough, that there's more polished speakers that have a better message or more articulate on stage or whatever it is, and that you're going to be a rap battle guy, whatever the phrase is for that, right? You're going to go to Minnesota and wherever that has taken you. I'd be sitting back going, I'm going to get laughed at. Like both of those. I'm a TED Talk, me doing any sort of rap battle, I will get laughed at. This will go viral. What made you take that step to do it?
Just figured out, if somebody else can do it, like Gary Vee says, if somebody that looks like you has done something, there's no excuse.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So you could just say that.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody that is sitting in a cubicle that is saying, I can't do that, be that, or have that, the first thing, and I've actually put it on my Instagram account yesterday, I think, was to find it's called modeling and then modify. I think it was an Ed Milet phrase. Find somebody to model that has done it, that looks like you, sounds like you, or comes from the same cloth as you, that has done it, and then modify the behavior to what they've done and do it. Right? Exactly. That's essentially what you did, right?
Yeah. And I'm a person, I do not like to fail. So if I set myself up for something and it's booked and I know it has to happen, then I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to screw it up. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make that happen. So pretty much I just, like I said, jump in the deep end and learn to swim once you get there.
Man, I don't think things are happening in my life or in our lives like Jason says on our podcast, this is not a coincidence. Like, I think you reaching out and us connecting, and I started this podcast very selfishly. It was to educate myself, to meet people, to network, and to be inspired. And man, you've really, I mean, we're only 45 minutes or 40 minutes in. I really appreciate all that. But it's so hard to, do you like winning more, or do you hate losing more? Or do you hate losing?
I hate losing. I love to see other people win more than I love to win myself, but I hate losing. And I think part of it is, I used to say it was an insecurity, but I think more of it now is just a vulnerability. Because I talk about in my TED Talk,
Yep.
I say we confuse vulnerability with insecurity, and insecurity is believing something negative about yourself, and vulnerability is accepting it. So I think
say that again. Say that again. Everybody, listen. This is one of these things you're going to have to listen to this episode again, and you're going to have to get it, because I typically take a lot of notes, but it's hard for when I'm actually doing the podcast. Vulnerability is what?
Insecurity is believing something negative about yourself, and vulnerability is accepting that and moving forward from it. Yeah, I think as long as, we'll open ourselves up and allow ourselves to be vulnerable. That's been one of my greatest strengths. My favorite thing is, I need help. If I ever feel like I'm struggling with something, I have no qualms about reaching out and asking for help. And again, just knowing that I'm not the smartest person, but I do surround myself with people smarter than me. So just really reaching out and relying on the power of the crowd to make things happen. And people really love to help more than you think. People hate to ask for help, but people love to give it.
Let me a few questions here.
Yeah.
You're giving one TED Talk. And I'm going to listen to it. Actually, just tell us again. What is the criteria for getting selected? Because you went through that pretty quick, and I want people to really understand how hard that is. How many? It was. You have to find a place, and I think yours was Quincy, right? So
yes.
you found a place, and how many? They accepted 20 spots, 20 talks.
20 for the final round, but I think there were 11 or 12 of us by the end of it.
So 11 people were selected, and how many people submitted applications at the start?
I think it was about 600.
So 600 out of 11 out of 600. Okay. So you made it. Now I wanted to make sure to get that right. So you get selected, and you have this great story, right? Of going to school, small high school, graduating, going to Champaign, getting a law degree, corporate law, kind of a fall to a certain extent, however you want to look at it, drugs, alcohol, divorce, all this sort of stuff to pick yourself up. But that is a great story. There's a great message in there, right? There's so many inspiring things in that story, but that's not what you spoke about.
Yeah. Well, for the theme of the event was big ideas from Little America.
Perfect.
And okay. I think everybody, there was probably 500 of those 600 that was the same type of story of mine, same type of struggle and getting through it, but really developing something that I truly thought could catch on and could make an impact. I share my story all the time when I speak, but if I'm going to speak on a platform like that, I wanted it to be a message of some sort of importance other than, I've struggled and I've made it. I think you hear that.
That's fair. Yeah, I think I appreciate that. So what was the talk? And I've listened to it, but I've listened to it a number of times. What was the talk? How did you come up with it? Why was it important to you? And I start with this. What was the title of your talk? Because I really like the title of it.
The title was Change the World from Your Couch. And I think the thing that really brought this talk on is surprisingly, people don't believe it because I'm out in the public so much, but I'm kind of an introvert. And I'm not, that's where I recharge, is when I'm at home and when I'm sitting on my couch, just able to dive into whatever I'm doing. So that was one of the things, is I don't want people to feel like you have to be, out in public or, doing these huge things to make a difference. You can truly change the world from right where you're sitting with technology. It started off as a speech about crowdsourcing and technology, but I kind of wanted to make it more inspirational. So I use this program. The Red Cross has a program called Missing Maps, because about 70% of the world is not mapped, not adequately represented on any map. And they have a program that the Red Cross started where you can literally look at satellite images on your computer. You trace a street, you trace a building, and we send that information over to volunteers in the field in vulnerable areas that aren't mapped. And the local people put that information into the map, street names, buildings, so that we know what resources to, where the resources should go whenever we're.
So how does that work? So me sitting on my couch, what software do I need to participate in this? Is it a Google Map thing? Is it just, how does one get involved in that? Because when you said that, I'm in software and technology. So that drew me in. I was very interested in what you were talking about. 2, I'm really into maps. I like maps a lot. And I'm like, that's kind of a cool thing. And 1, I didn't even know that, right? I didn't know that. Did you just say 70%?
It's about 70%, not the water part. But
right.
Yeah, 70% of the land mass is actually not adequately represented. And I mean, it's on a map, but there's, you'll see in the TED Talk, there's a place called Zavarasekwa, Zimbabwe. And the Red Cross went in to provide humanitarian relief in 2015. And the only thing on the map was basically a circle of a road and one road that went through it. Mm-hmm. And it looked like, I guess what we would call the boonies here in Southern Illinois. But honestly, it was a population of about 50,000 people that lived there, but not one house was represented, not one side street. And the Red Cross has been able to map that area so it shows all of those different locations whenever we go in to provide relief.
So how does one get involved in that to contribute and to help out with that?
Yeah, if you Google missing maps, or I think it's missingmaps.org, you can sign up, create an account, and basically just start mapping. They have a list of vulnerable areas that they're mapping at the moment, and you click in and it'll show you who's editing certain parts, so that one's locked during that time, but then you just choose an area and start tracing roads, tracing buildings, and once you hit submit, that goes to a person who verifies that information, verifies that you've traced it correctly, basically, and then that's sent over to the vulnerable areas, and we have volunteers in those areas that are actually saying, this is this street, this is this church, this building, and just 3 very simple steps that are literally changing the world.
So how did you get involved in that? Is that just something you knew that the Red Cross was doing, needed help with? I mean, do you have a background in technology? So when you put this talk together and you isolated on that, missing maps, what drew you to that? I mean, obviously there's a need, right? There's a need, you're fulfilling a need, and it's all that. But how did you get involved in that?
Honestly, that was just a program that I know that the Red Cross is doing. And I started participating as just a participant, not an employee of the Red Cross, just like a Joe Schmo that found the website and started tracing maps. But it really just showed me that we could make those small differences, or those huge differences, with these very small steps. And I use that to parlay into my message of, the 4 pillars that I believe that we can each use to truly change the world. And that's something that I've been developing for a long time now, and just kind of trying to figure out exactly how, people who change the world take those steps. And I've been able to break it down into 4 pillars of vulnerability, communication, knowledge, and love.
So yeah, I've got those written down here, and we've talked a little bit about vulnerability, and when you brought that up and kind of reflecting back on yourself, is that something you just have? Like, did you get to a point? I don't know what you were like, or there's got to be some sort of swagger to somebody that is a lawyer, right? Where he knows everything, smartest guy in the room, and I graduated from here, and I'm practicing law here, and and all that. And there's a fear to that. I'm a lawyer, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of vulnerability probably in lawyers. That's not a word I would probably think of, right? Mm-hmm. Is that something? Do you feel you always kind of had that trait or skill or characteristic, or did you develop that, or were you humbled by what you went through to allow you to kind of force you into some vulnerability?
Exactly. I was super insecure growing up. I was never the coolest person in the room by any stretch of the imagination, but I was very guarded, and I dealt with a lot of issues, depression and insecurity. And I was always very guarded, and realized that was pushing me towards some of those destructive habits that I was having, and just realized that I needed help. Once I quit corporate law and became a janitor, that was kind of my cry for help, that I needed to really find myself and figure out what it was that I was running from. One of my favorite phrases that I've come up with is, I mean, if you're running a race, it's impossible to focus on the finish line if there's a bear chasing you. So you got to figure out how to turn around, kill that bear, and be able to focus on the finish line. So that was what created my vulnerability was, like you said, being humbled by the situation with drugs and alcohol. And since then, I've kind of been doing a test where, I just open up and tell people my biggest struggles, my issues, and they open up to me as well. And you don't realize how much you connect with other people in those feelings. Again, in the TED Talk, I use the quote, "Don't compare your movie to somebody else's highlight reel." Right. And that's what I was doing. I was putting out this amazing movie or this amazing highlight reel and not sharing my struggles, and other people, comparing myself to someone else. You see a happy couple walking down the road, but you don't see the fights that they're having back home. So it's really
let's stop. I really appreciate that, because you said something offline when we were quickly getting to know each other before we clicked record. You're is fasting the right word? You're fasting right now, but you're not fasting from food. What are you fasting from right now?
I'm fasting from social media at the moment.
And why'd you? We spend so much. We are a society built on social media. That is, and I understand it. Listen, I'm on LinkedIn. I've got my Instagram. I have actually been off of Facebook for about 1.5 years now, which is perfect. I'm on Twitter to a certain extent. But we are glued to those devices, and then we do sit there. We sit there and say, if it's an Instagram post or a Facebook post about how great everybody else is doing, and I'm sitting around going, man, my life, I can't take those vacations. My life must suck, right? Yeah. So why the decision to fast from that?
I really felt like I was just I was honestly dealing with some depression, and just comparing myself to everybody else, and you feel like you should be further along because so-and-so can take these huge vacations. And I think Gary Vee hits it on the head, like you said, not really caring what other people think whenever who is it, he says Sally Pants 97 or whatever. Right. Whenever they're posting these amazing things on social media, you look at that and you compare yourself to that, or you put up a post and you don't get the 200 likes that you normally get, and you just want to delete it. So it's one of those things where I just felt like I was getting too involved in it, and my self-worth was actually relying on other people's opinion. So in this past couple months, I've been kind of getting connected with my faith a little more and trying to just really develop the confidence in myself as opposed to caring what other people think. So,
man, I think that's big time.
It's a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, figuring out what inspires you, and that's one reason why I do this podcast. It's to be inspired, to keep me centered and focused. And the phrase we've used in basketball, and I have 2 young boys. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. 8? No, he's 9. 9 and 10. Oh, no, he's not. He's 8. He'll be 9 in a month or so. Is you don't compare, you compete. You never compare. You can't sit there and say, that 4th grader, you're all different. My thing is this, and my thing is this. I want to say 2 things, I guess. One is certain people have just started down that road. I don't believe in anybody being better than anybody else necessarily. I understand you can sit there and say, that person is better because he can shoot a basketball better or what that. The reality is that person is just further down that road. If you spent that time of 2 hours a day and you did it for the next 13 months, like, you'd be further down the road than the person just starting. Yeah, I guess you could look and say you're better, but you're just further down the road. But if you start comparing to this person, Kobe Bryant has a great thing he does with Lewis Howes where he just talks about basketball and life and skills, and your personal development really is a math game. It's just like, I'm going to figure out how to be in the gym 2 more hours a day than you. Yeah. And then if you parlay that over 365 days, I'm going to be further ahead than you. And yes, better than you, right? Yeah. But the reality is I'm just putting in more time. But you can't compare. You compete. You compete against that time. So, and I really, I really appreciate that mindset. I really appreciate that you've, taken that, taken that that fast, because if you do sit there every day and compare and compare and compare. And why am I not doing that? Or why don't I have that? Or why are they better than me? They're not, and how has that changed you? So how long has this fast been going on for?
It's only been going on. It's 21 days. It's prayer and fasting that I'm doing through church. And it's just kind of a chance to get closer to God, closer to my faith, and just find myself again. And the social media thing, I chose that because I'm a little bitty dude. I don't have enough weight to be fasting from food. So I was for about a week or 2 weeks, and I dropped about 12 pounds. So I had to quit that and start grabbing some cheeseburgers again. But yeah, it's just helped me to kind of reconnect and just humbled me a little bit and kind of made me feel like I'm better and, like you said, compete as opposed to compare. So I've been taking many more steps towards succeeding in public speaking and just trying to figure out how I'm going to move forward with that. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think's going to stop you? Is there anything right now that you're like mentally trying to overcome to get you? Let me ask this. Let me ask it a different way. And I usually end kind of our conversations like this, although I haven't recently. What do you think you'll be doing in 10 years?
In 10 years, hopefully I'll just be, able to speak on bigger platforms and just get my message out there and hopefully just help people kind of find that love and compassion for life, for other people, and to just find more meaning in life. I think that's my true purpose. I'm the biggest cheerleader for anybody that wants to follow their dreams, anybody that feels like they have roadblocks. I'm the first person to give you advice on how to get past that, the last person to take it, to be honest. I definitely have some insecurities or some vulnerabilities that I haven't really fleshed out yet. And I think that's what's probably going to stop me is that comparison and just trying to get to that next level, but also looking at people that are up there and comparing myself to them. So again, I can give the advice, but it's hard to take it myself.
It's amazing to think that even the places we're at, like right now, I'm really excited about what I'm doing. I'm excited about who I'm doing it with, the people I have around me, my kids, my community around here, the job I have, the clients. Like it's all going really well. I'm super excited about the podcast, the networking, meeting people. But you sit back and say, you want more, right? You want to do more. You want to have more impact. You want to meet more people. You want to have better, deeper conversations. You want to do the podcast better, whatever it is, right? And you want more, and maybe you don't feel fulfilled. Maybe you get a little depressed. Maybe you think you can't do it. And I say all that because I'm 45. If the 35-year-old me, I'm doing what the 35-year-old me wanted to do. Like the 35-year-old me, I think would be really proud of the 45-year-old me. And I'm sitting around going, why can't I just be really happy with, but there is the wanting to do more. And I'm sitting around going, okay, what's the 55-year-old me going to be like? And I'll probably be doing that stuff at 55, but still feeling I can do more, have more impact, and do all that sort of stuff and not compare or any of that sort of stuff and not be down about it, but be really excited about it. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how old you are and you don't have to say but the person you were 10 years ago, would he be really proud of where you're at now?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think Simon Sinek touches on that with he has a new talk out called The Infinite Game. And he's actually writing a new book about it. And he talks about how we treat life and people treat businesses like finite games where there's winners and there's losers. And we don't really see that, living is finite, but life is infinite. And the impact that you can make should stretch beyond now. And even in businesses, people start these businesses to get more ahead and to spend more money, but they're not really realizing that it has to last and it has to create this true impact. He uses the Microsoft and Apple example, whereas Microsoft spends most of their time talking about how to beat Apple, and Apple spends most of their time talking about how to get better. So that's why they're able to play the infinite game. And he also has the analogy to the Vietnam War, whereas the United States was fighting to win the war and Vietnam was just fighting for their lives. So the only way that an infinite game ends is that someone runs out of resources to be able to continue the fight. There's really no winners and losers. And it's the same way with life. I mean, none of us are getting out alive, as I think, what is it, Ferris Bueller said?
Right. Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's no winning and losing, but just living our life to make the biggest impact, I think, is the thing that we have right. The fact that we're unhappy is probably a good sign. We shouldn't ever feel like we're fulfilled. I always say if I'm overqualified, I'm going to underperform in my life, because I'd much rather be underqualified and striving for something bigger or setting a possible dream that I'm never going to reach than to reach that dream and become depressed because there's nothing more.
Yeah. So I really appreciate all that. The one thing that I wrote down a few weeks ago and highlighted in my notebook that I carry with me, it comes from Matthew McConaughey. And we said this a few weeks ago, where he won an Oscar, and he's holding it up there, giving this great speech. It was actually a really good speech, but essentially he says, I am chasing who I am in 10 years, right? I have this vision of who I'm going to be at, me personally at 55. I know I'm painting this great image of who that person is, how he is as a dad, an employee, a spouse, in my community, with my friends, all that sort of stuff. And I'm chasing that. That is who I am chasing. And there's no finish line to it, right? Mm-hmm. It's always that sort of chase. So I really appreciate, that. And I really like that phrase. If I'm overqualified, I'll underperform. Right. Is that how you said that?
Yes.
That is how you said that, right? Yeah. Let me ask this. I want to circle back to one thing. We only have a few minutes left, and I really wanted to hit on the vulnerability, communication, knowledge, and love. But you did say something that struck me. You said you started with a dream board. That somebody the podcast, and what was the guy's name? Mitch something.
Mitch Matthews. Yeah.
So he had everybody go around and put up dreams on maybe big Post-it notes or dry erase boards, whatever it might be, right?
I've actually got my dream sheets right over there.
Perfect. So you would get along with Jason and me really well. So perfect. If you're watching on YouTube, he is going over. So you have these big. Okay, so you actually have these. It's called big dream gathering.
Yeah, it's a dream sheet. This is one of my dreams, to be an amazing dad. So yeah, just kind of you put your dreams up on the wall, and people go around, and if they can help you in any way with your dream or give you some encouragement, then they write that up there. Somebody on this one just wrote "Go for it," and that was the one thing of encouragement.
So how often now I misunderstood you, that this was something that you did maybe is this part of a group that you go and meet with and you do this? Or is that just something you did once with this gentleman and that was it?
He actually does these on college campuses all over the country. And I went to 3 separate ones. I actually went to one where I used to work, one where I live now, and then I drove to St. Louis for one as well.
Okay. And that is the exercise. Everybody puts this up, and then people go around and write down either encouraging words, or they write down, hey, I know so-and-so, and I can help you do this.
Yes, and he has a podcast called Dream, Think, Do.
Right.
It's amazing. He's just a very inspirational guy, and just a good dude.
So the time that you did it, I don't know if that is what you wrote down to be an amazing dad, what you wrote down when you met with him for the first time and did that exercise, or is that one something you just fill out?
That's one that I wrote down for him whenever I had the exercise, and that was before we were even pregnant, before we even thought about having a kid. And we do have kids now, and I hope I'm fulfilling that dream. So.
What we're that's got to be. So we talked about this on a podcast this past week, actually, where it's people have these great, my friend Jason that records with us. He talked the other day about, hey, I know this is going to happen. He listens to all the people we've mentioned and that you've mentioned. Jason listens to all them as well. He said at one point in the next 10 years, I will be on Tom Bilyeu's show, Impact Theory. He was like, I will be a guest on that show. There's not a doubt in my mind that I think that will happen for Jason. Jason's just on it. And and the phrase that I think we used on the show, is he deserves it. Whatever that looks like. Whatever it looks like to deserve something, the work you put in, the attitude you have, how you treat people, how you grind it every day to try to make that happen. But what is important, and what Jason and I have talked about, is that, and I said this to him, I want to have Ed Milet on my show. I was like, in the next 10 years, I would like the podcast to be big enough that then I will focus to try to have that happen where Ed Milet comes on a show. Hopefully, I have said that will be at his house, which is in Laguna Beach, overlooking the ocean, right? That I will record there with him.
Nice place.
But it really is who you become through that process. It is not me sitting on Ed Milet's couch interviewing him. It is the process of trying to build this podcast up, of being a better interviewer, of being able to ask questions that we can get great content out of and inspire other people. And for me, it's all that sort of stuff, right? It's about who Jason becomes, right? So you writing that board down and saying, I want to be this great dad, it's who you become to be that person, right? Yeah. It's that process. But the thing that I'm interested about the dream board thing that you all did, or that you continue to do, is the service that comes with it, of people going around saying, my hope right now, and I said this to Jason yesterday when we were talking, is I think you're going to be on Tom Bilyeu's show, and I want to know what I can do to support and help you.
Yeah.
So I really like that. That part of it where everybody kind of goes around. I guess my wonder is, and maybe there's not a question to this commentary, I'm just wondering why we don't do that professionally for people, like with our teams and our businesses, and why it's so locked down to certain things. Like we as leaders, you do a fair amount of leading, and you called it servant leadership when we were offline before we got going.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why we don't do that as leaders, where you can sit there and say, hey, Julian, I know you work for me and all that, and let's go grab some coffee. Hey, what are you really passionate about? What do you do? And it doesn't have anything to do with the Red Cross or whatever, but like, what do you want to do? And then sit back and have that leader sit there and say to you, what can I do to support that? How can I help you? What can we do off hours so you are fulfilled with all that, even if it takes you away from the Red Cross and you don't work for me anymore? But I'm wondering why we don't do that.
Yeah. And that's a quote I read the other day. It says, what happens if we build up, or one person talks to the other one and says, what happens if we build up this person and they leave us? And the other one says, well, what happens if we don't and they stay?
Right.
So that's really making people the best that they are while they're with us, and pushing them towards their dreams is going to make us and our businesses better during that time period where we actually have them. Right. And, once they get more successful, once you go through something, if you don't turn around and help other people behind you, then it's kind of done in vain. So I truly feel like we should make everybody the best they can be, and it'll come back around.
Yeah. So tell me the leadership stuff that you do and where you start. And it's 5:00 here, so I know we have to wrap up a little bit. But I appreciate what you're doing, because this is my passion and my juice, and what I plug into is I love working with young kids in an athletic arena. I do a lot of basketball training, and we do a lot of leadership. We talk a lot about leadership and communication, goals and things like that. I get a lot of juice from that. But you said something offline that I felt connected us a little bit, in that you spend a lot of time in leadership seminars, workshops, or whatever it might be with young kids. Now, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. And I love going back and just teaching college students, high school students, just young adults, corporations, anyone, what it means to be a true leader. I've been in some places where I haven't had the best leaders, and it's really hurt the company, I feel. Some companies just have poor ideas and poor visions of leadership and what leaders truly are. At the beginning of every one of my leadership trainings, I ask people, who likes to tell people what to do? Raise your hand. And 90% of the room raises their hand, and it's like, who likes to be told what to do? And the two kids that raise their hand, those are the leaders in the room. Because I don't feel that as leaders, we are telling people what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do, and so they can figure out how to do it. So it's really that, servant leadership, and just giving people the resources that they need to succeed will help us succeed in the future. And as long as you're authentic, they know you're genuine, and you're just being yourself, you'll truly connect with those people and build a better organization.
Now, is that so? This 10-year plan, what's the perfect job for you? Is it, there's probably, the missing maps or whatever you're involved with the Red Cross and the humanitarian and blood drives and disaster relief. Like there's a lot of honor and all that.
Yes.
But what is the perfect job for you? And it could be that, and I'm not trying to get you to say it's not. I'm just wondering what do you see like in the next 10 years And I know we've talked a little bit about your speaking and all that, but what would be the perfect job?
Yeah, I think in the next 10 years, being a speaker, being a coach, just making sure that people are living their best lives, not to use the cliche phrase right now, but just making sure that people find meaning in life and find purpose. Whatever I can do to make that happen, that's my true calling. Mm. Whether it be speaking, working with a nonprofit organization, with the Red Cross, I just truly believe that as long as I can make everybody else around me better, that's a win.
Okay, so I want to wrap this up, and I really appreciate you reaching out. Again, I don't believe Jason's got me on this where there's no coincidence. Like this stuff like this, these networking, these connections, these conversations are all kind of supposed to happen, which I appreciate. But I'm still blown away by this whole rap battle thing. I can't get past this for a little bit. At what point do you think that if you're watching 8 Mile that you can sit there and say, I think I can do that? And just, are you still doing that? Like, do you still travel around and kind of do that? And how did you end up on MTV?
I don't perform anymore. I actually run a league in St. Louis. I'll invite you out to one of the events when I'm out there.
I've got to go to that.
Yes, you got to come out.
I'm sure. You tell me when you're up here, and I am going to that.
Yes, but I host the events now. I'm just the guy that stands up there and says, "Hey, rapper on your right, introduce yourself." So,
where do you run those in St. Louis? If you don't know, you don't. But
it's on Cherokee Street. Club Propaganda is where we do a lot of ours. It's a kind of a Russian themed club there, and we have a back room there that we run it out of.
I'm in, man.
Cool. We have leagues in St. Louis, Chicago, Minneapolis, NoCoastRaps.com if you want to check it out.
No Coast, COAST?
Yeah, like Midwest No Coast Raps.
No Coast Raps.
Yes, and so now I kind of help host the league, and I guess at one point I just felt like I wanted to try it. It wasn't that I thought I would be great at it. That's why I did it in Minneapolis, so if I was bad, I could go home and nobody would know.
Smart.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just been a really fun opportunity. And actually, I guess the creator of The Real World, Jonathan Murray, he emailed or Facebook messaged me one day, and I thought it was a joke. I thought somebody was messing with me, because then he emailed me from johnthemurray@soandso.com. So I thought it was somebody kind of messing with me, and so I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll be on MTV. And then contracts started coming through the email, and he just said that he really enjoyed the rap battles and that they were going to be in Chicago one day and wanted us to battle the host of one of his shows. So it just came about, and yeah, worked out. I showed up at this bar in Chicago. They had cameras hanging from the ceilings, and it was
so a rap battle. I know nothing about this. I know nothing about this, man. A rap battle, is it the winner, or so when you say a league, I'm thinking that there's winners and losers and that there's a team. I'm guessing that the teams are individual, that it's one person on a team. I don't know if it's like 4 or 5 people that are a team that are all have to win, or however that works. But if it's one person, then is it like the audience determines the winner? Like whoever gets the most cheers? Is there a ballot bot? Like how does that work?
Well, most of the battles are not judged. So basically, I mean, it's for entertainment. If you keep getting booked, and you can tell kind of by crowd reaction who did better and who didn't. Okay. But I mean, we do have a champion of the league, and those are judged. But we actually send those videos out to remote judges. So people in California, Boston, Georgia will be judging the event if there's a winner or a loser. But for the most part, it's just for fun. I mean, if you keep getting booked and they keep bringing you back, then I guess you won. So, and if you get paid, because I got paid pretty well whenever I was ending my rapping career. But
that's great. So, I mean, really, there's a lot to unpack here, and everybody that's listening, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. I've really enjoyed this. But the thing that is just going to stick with me, and that I'll think about for the next while, is we can all do great things. I just believe that. I believe that we can all do great things, and we can all we can provide great value to our families and our spouses and our employees, our clients, our companies, our friends, our community, our churches, like this great stuff. But the thing that always will stop us is this, this self-doubt, this thinking I'm not good enough, I can't contribute, I'm not valuable enough, I'm not smart enough. And you just overcame it. You said, screw it. Right? Yeah. I'll go to Minneapolis. I'll go do this. You jumped out of your cube.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you did. You are the embodiment of everything that the kind of the podcast stands for. If sitting around saying, I'm not fulfilled, drugs, alcohol, divorce, I'm a corporate lawyer, and none of this matters. None of this matters. And I'm going to go work as a janitor at my high school. Now, I'm not suggesting the people that are unhappy in their career sitting in a cubicle need to stop doing that. I'm just saying we need to be reflective on what we're doing and how we're doing it and the impact we have and adjust. And the adjustment might be, I'm going to be in 30 minutes earlier. I'm going to start reading these books, or I'm going to start working out, or I'm going to involve myself in these community groups or my church, or I'm going to interact with my spouse a little, like whatever it is, right? It's making it's adjusting all the dials that we have access to be more deliberate and more connected and more collaborative and more engaged with the people around us. And you did that. You just took huge steps, right?
If you met me 10 years ago, I'm a different person. You know, I just gave a speech on Monday and the theme was dream, believe, achieve. And there's people that sit around dreaming and believing it'll happen, but nobody ever got a six-pack by thinking about doing crunches. So you got to get out there and hit the pavement and start doing the work.
Man, I really appreciate it, Julian. Really, I'm so thankful. And again, no coincidence. I believe you were supposed to bring that message to us and to me. I really believe that. And so the ask is this. The ask is that when the rap battle is in St. Louis, that you track me down on LinkedIn, and I will be there. I will be sitting up like I'm not going to get on stage or anything, but I will sit there, and I'm fascinated by that. Right?
Yeah,
I would be really into that. So
I'm gonna make my way up there, and we're gonna grab a beer before that happens.
Perfect. Perfect. And listen, I will say this. This is what Julian, we reached out, and however that story ended up happening. But Julian is, how far, I'm not from this area. I've lived here for 10 years, but I don't know how far it is from where you live to St. Louis. How long of a drive is that?
Probably about an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay. So an hour, 45 minutes. And Julian actually did this. Julian reached out, wanted to be on the podcast. We made arrangements. Maybe he, did some research on the pod, whatever it is, right? But Julian actually said, hey, why don't I just drive up there and we can meet face to face? And I was like, hey, this is I believe in the podcast. I love the podcast. It's getting bigger, but you do not need to drive up to have a conversation with me. So, you don't need to be doing that. So, but he really wanted to, and I really appreciate that type of stuff. We had a guy on named Alan Stein, who's now getting to be a quote unquote big shot, right? And Alan's I think a big time guy. He's going to be on that 10X stage. He's going to be crushing it. He's, and all that. And he's came on our podcast when we were 15 episodes in and spent 2 hours talking. And I really appreciated that because he didn't need to do that. And for you to say, hey, I'll drive up there to be on it. I was like, wow, you don't need to do that. This is, but so that just speaks a lot of who you are and the values you have and how you treat people and all that. That's all you need to say, right? Is something like that. And I'm in. So with all that being said, hey, how can people track you down? How can people reach out to you? How can they get you to come speak to their groups? How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's LinkedIn Julian-Watkins. I'm on Instagram at the Julian Watkins. Got to make it sound important, right?
Right.
And, Facebook, if you just look me up, I think it's like the Julian Watkins or Julian C. Watkins, something like that. I have a website, julianwatkins.net, and that's where I book most of my speaking engagements through. And just look me up on LinkedIn or, anytime anyone reaches out, I'm going to respond. And I truly believe that, anytime somebody takes the time to reach out, they deserve a response. So regardless of how big this gets or how much happens, I'll be
it's going to be big. It'll be big. Good for you. Listen, and everybody that's listening, the show notes will have so go to the show notes, click on the links to access his website, his Instagram, his LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that's all in the show notes. So with that, can't thank you enough, Julian. It's a pleasure meeting you and having you on and having this conversation. And I'll honor your time by letting you get out of here. So I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, brother. All right.